Sunny Dude from YouTube wrote in.
Hi, Sonny.
What is your opinion of Napoleon Bonaparte? He did help save the church from persecution after the revolution, but he also took part in the revolution and caused a lot of wars.
Well, before I address your question, Sonny Dude, I'm just curious as to whether you're one of the dudes of Oregon or the branch of the family in Florida. Anyway, moving along. Well, that's his last name, right? Dude. Sonny Dude. Sonny's his first name, Dude. All right, never mind. Anyway, to answer the question, which is a very good one, by the way, Napoleon Bonaparte is a transitional figure. You can say that all that was good at him came from his birth and background in the Austrian regime. All that was worst in him helped produce the modern age. Because he was the first of the great dictators of our time. It's interesting that his nephew, Napoleon III, really was aware of this dichotomy within himself. On the one hand, wanted to be a legitimate monarch, which of course, eventually when Napoleon became Emperor of the French, he tried to become a legitimate monarch. He wanted to succeed Charlemagne and be sort of a new Holy Roman Emperor. That was on the one hand. On the other hand, he saw himself as bringing the ideals of the French Revolution to fruition. It's a hard dichotomy. But having said that, I have to say that he gave himself an impossible mission and failed at it, as anyone would.
Yeah.
Except he didn't quite. It's like John Lukács makes the point in his book, The Hitler of History. And I have to say that title, parenthetically, that title, The Hitler of History, I'm sure must be connected to the idea that certain liberal theologians have, where they distinguish the Jesus of history from the Christ of faith.
Ah.
So, when I saw the Hitler of history, it immediately made me fear that somebody somewhere was treasuring up the Adolf of faith, which I really don't want to hear about at all. The Hitler of history is bad enough. The point he made of the Hitler of history is that in 1815, they defeated Napoleon, the Allies did, and they figured that they had stuffed the genie back in the bottle. But they hadn't. And 100 years later, World War I, almost every country in Europe was run according to what were really Bonapartist lines. They didn't call them Bonapartists, they called them liberal.
Yeah.
But it was Bonapartist, very centralized, very top-heavy. And similarly, says Lukács, in 1945, the victorious Allies thought that they had stuffed Hitler back in the bottle. But they hadn't. And today, the West is run along lines that if Hitler wouldn't have agreed with completely, he would have agreed with a heavy chunk. Certainly in the banishment of Christianity from civic life, the anti-smoking, of course, he was very much an anti-smoker, anti-booze, vegetarian, animal rights, pro-abortion to a degree, pro-contraception to a degree, depending on who was contracepting and who was aborting.
Yeah.
Ditto euthanasia. In fact, you could call the whole Holocaust euthanasia gone wild.
What about animal rights?
Yes, he was very much in favor of animal rights. He would have appreciated speciesism, the concept, I mean. He wouldn't have been in favor of it. He would have understood what they meant by it. So if it weren't for his little Jewish problem, Uncle Adolf would have been really welcome today in the circles of power, or as someone with his views anyway.
Wow. Being
so old as he would be over 100 today, and a prime candidate for euthanasia himself.
Okay, so Napoleon and Hitler were pioneers for their time.
In a sense, I mean, don't get me wrong, Napoleon had far more in the way of good qualities to him than Hitler did.
Yeah.
But Hitler was a development of all that was worst in Napoleon.
Wow.
Taken to, on steroids.
Yeah.
Just as you can well say that Stalin, coming off the same principles, was even worse.
Yeah.
And Mao, coming off those same principles, was worse yet. we're not taught to have the same visceral hatred and disgust for the communists that we do for the Nazis, partly because so many of our important people are communists or Marxists or whatever they want to call themselves, partly because Uncle Joe Stalin was our ally in World War II, and as Americans, you know, we're always wonderful, we can never do anything wrong. So by virtue of having been our ally, Uncle Joe was sort of baptized. That was FDR's name for him, Uncle Joe. I like Uncle Joe. We can do business. Yeah, okay. Thank you, FDR. Anyway, so Bonaparte was very much a transitional figure between the...
On the downward slope. He began the downward slope, it seems.
Well, I wouldn't say he began it, but he certainly was a key player.
A key player. Okay.
I would say, though, that I've said Napoleon III was his nephew, but really Bismarck was his heir.
Ah.
Which is ironic when you think about it.
Yeah.
But the German state apparatus that Bismarck built up, that the Kaiser lost and later fell to Hitler, that was inspired by Napoleon.
Wow.